Okay, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Let's talk about it. I have watched every episode. I think it is a good cartoon. I don't think it's just a good cartoon. I actually think it's exceptional, though flawed in its delivery. And I think everybody will recognize the flaws in the delivery. There's a lot of things they put in this cartoon they could have gone without. Look, I think we all know this. I think we're all familiar with the issues that Disney has had. I don't think this is any surprise to any of us. So I'm not going to focus on any of that because you all know what the problems are. But the cartoon itself, I think, had Disney done the rollout differently and had they not swapped characters, this would easily be one of their biggest, biggest, biggest hits in a long time. In a long time. That's how much I enjoyed this cartoon. I heard a lot of people complain about the art style. I didn't really have a problem with the art style. Personally, I felt like I was reading an old 80s comic book, and I felt like that's what they were going for. Now, I know we live in a modern age, modern era. People are used to different things in comic books, and that's probably what they were looking for, but thoroughly enjoyable. Like I felt like I felt like I did the first time I saw Tom Holland as Spider-Man. In my mind, I was like, yo, this is the first time on screen where I think right out the gate they got an accurate portrayal of Spider-Man. And when I started watching Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, in my mind, I literally thought to myself, man, this is actually a very fun portrayal and it feels like reading the comic books. I loved Spider-Man growing up. I haven't really up until Ultimate Spider-Man, I hadn't really bought too many Spider-Man comic books cuz it just Spider-Man got really weird for me and it really wasn't that exceptional some of the books that I had seen and read, so I kind of fell off. But Ultimate Spider-Man brought me back on, and man, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, I will definitely be around for season 2. Most definitely. With all the things, with all the missteps, they manage to, in some ways, course correct around those missteps and make this a cartoon that is worthy of watching. I think anybody who is a fan of Spider-Man, if you were to watch this cartoon, just going objectively, don't overdo it concerning yourself with the things that they got wrong. I don't know if I've ever seen a comic book or a movie where everything was right. Now, of course, we know in the age we live in, it seems like these companies make it a business of doing something wrong. Now, I will warn you, I'm going to go to this website, disneyfandom.com/wiki, just to kind of curate and go over give a synopsis of the episodes and, maybe dig a little deeper, see what some of them are. Maybe not. I might stay away from that. But the biggest thing in this cartoon that really, it surprised me. Okay, so again, spoilers. When the cartoon first starts, episode 1, you see Peter Parker, he gets accepted into Midtown High. He's excited about the robotics program. He's late for the train. Aunt May drives him to school. She sees him waiting for the train. He gets to school, and immediately this portal opens. Doctor Strange comes out chasing a symbiote. So immediately I'm thinking to myself, okay, alternate universe, which yes and no. What you were witnessing was a time loop. Now, for those who don't know what a time loop is, or an infinite loop in time travel, it is, I had to, look it up to get the proper definition. I knew what it was after I saw the last episode, because that's when you figure out this is an infinite loop. Okay, an infinite loop is in time travel refers to a scenario where events continuously repeat in a self-contained cycle with no clear beginning or end. This usually happens when a time traveler influences the past in such a way that their actions create the very conditions that led them to time travel in the first place. So this is exactly what happened. There's a string of events through the cartoon that lead up to what you see in that last episode, and the time travel of Doctor Strange, which I thought was just an alternate universe Doctor Strange. It was a time travel Doctor Strange that goes through this portal, and the events play out. Peter Parker gets bit by this radioactive spider. Yo, enjoyable. Like when I got to that last episode, Doctor Strange shows up because Osborne has this portal that he has developed using these interns. So throughout the show, he hires these interns, to work on projects. Really what he did was he hired the smartest kids that had some idea or developed something that would help him get to his ultimate goal of setting up this portal into other worlds and other dimensions, which he eventually sets up. But before they can open it, Doctor Strange shows up because he realizes what they're doing. And he's like, hey, you have to stop. You can't do this. This is not good. They do it anyway. Symbiote comes through the portal. Everybody's terrified. Doctor Strange is fighting him. Obviously Spider-Man comes in. Peter was there because, he's working for Osborne. Everybody's fighting him. Everybody leaves. Peter shows back up as Spider-Man. He's helping Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange eventually opens a portal, goes through that portal. It's a time portal. He ends up at Midtown High right when Peter shows up that first day of orientation. Exactly what we see in the first episode. And I was like, I actually didn't see that coming. I did not see that coming. Even when Doctor Strange showed up and Peter was like, hey, you're the guy that destroyed Midtown High. And Doctor Strange was like, kid, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, what's interesting is, if I'm not mistaken, somebody in the comments correct me on this, the Sorcerer Supreme, which I don't know if I'm trying to remember the episode now because I watched it and, heard all the dialogue. I didn't watch it again. I don't think he mentioned being a Sorcerer Supreme in that episode. He's a sorcerer. He did mention that. But if he is the Sorcerer Supreme, I thought they were supposed to know things like this, like time travel, variants, alternates. I don't know. Maybe I got that bit of information wrong. But, yo, I was floored in the sense that it was a degree of an unpredictable thing that I didn't see coming, that I thought, the writers managed to actually surprise me. Like, I did not see this. I thought when Doctor Strange showed up, didn't know what they were talking about. I thought they were going to open a portal to an alternate reality where that Doctor Strange shows up, so on and so forth. Turns out, again, I'm giving a lot. I'm just scattershotting things out there. There's a lot in these episodes. Turns out Osborne, obviously being, corrupt, he was helping Spider-Man, right? He figured out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man in episode 2, I believe it's episode 2. And he was helping Spider-Man, but really what he was doing, he was taking his DNA and trying to replicate what happened to him. Well, this spider that they were using to try to replicate his powers, actually, when the symbiote went through that time portal with Doctor Strange, went through the portal as well, and that was the spider that bit Peter, thus creating that infinite loop. And I was like, yo, I actually like this. Like, I like this. Some people may not, but I enjoyed that. Again, the character swaps, race swaps, it was unnecessary. But with that said, that did not overtake the show. And the problem many shows have when they do character and race swaps is those things become what define the show. Yo, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man managed to escape that. I don't know if the showrunners understood the changing winds, I don't know if they were told to change course because it looks like at some point they were going to lean heavily into the racial element and the swap element, and they just abandoned that completely, and in my humble opinion just stuck with a good story. Now again, it would have been better off if they would have just never done any of the swaps. I think this would have been more widely accepted because this feels like a comic book playing out on a cartoon screen, which I enjoyed. Anyway, we're going to get into this website I was telling you about. I've never seen this website before. It's disney.fandom.com /wiki or /wiki / your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So I'm just going to it gives you the rundown of every episode. Episode 1, during high school orientation, Peter's life is forever changed. A new era of Spider-Man begins. Episode 2, Peter begins an exclusive internship, but his first day is way more complicated than expected. And this is funny because I believe it was episode 1 when it ended, Peter showed back up at home and it was Osborne there to give him an internship. Similar to, if you remember from the Marvel movies, this is a similar thing, only it was Tony Stark, but this time it was Osborne. So it's kind of a play on things that we've seen before. Episode 3, Peter deals with the fallout of his secret revealed. Meanwhile, Lonnie's perfect life falls apart. And this is the episode where they kind of, in some ways, move in the direction on the racial element, but they, again, to my surprise, they didn't like lead with that, and they didn't like heavily focus on that. So even though it was there, and you might roll your eyes if you see it, it's there and it's passing. Really, it's not. It doesn't overtake the episode. They figured out how to put this stuff in. And I've always said this. I have said this before. If you are a creator, whatever it is you believe, at some point, that thing is going to bleed out into your creation. That's impossible. We all have belief systems. I am a believer. If I made any kind of book or comic book or anything like that, at some point, my beliefs as a Christian will bleed out into my creation. I don't think it's possible for you to completely avoid that. The thing is, if you can manage to do that without beating people over the head. Obviously, if I'm writing, a book based on theology, yeah, I'm going to beat you over the head with theology because that's the point of the book. But if I'm writing a sci-fi story purely for enjoyment, I have to figure out a way to maintain my beliefs, right? Not abandon my beliefs, but not beat you over the head with that and just create a good story. And look, you might disagree with me, but I believe that this cartoon actually figured out how to do that. Now, it would have been amazing if Disney could have figured this out early on, because again, I think they would have been granted some leeway in many of these things. That was a good episode. Episode 4, Peter and Norman work through creative differences while Lonnie undergoes a loyalty test because now he's part of a gang. That's a whole nother topic, but good episode. Episode 5, Peter makes a new friend. Meanwhile, Lonnie finds himself in the sights of a dangerous gang, the Scorpion Gang. Episode 6, Peter's night off is derailed when he must suit up to stop a mysterious intruder. That's another good one because this is the episode, I believe, where he runs into Daredevil, which Daredevil has infiltrated Oscorp using, oh man, I don't want to give everything away, but it's actually good. It's actually good. Like I thought to myself, man, they like whoever wrote this actually read some comic books. Like, everything, the issues I pointed out aside, they actually read some comic books and you actually enjoy what you're watching. Episode 7, Peter and Lonnie face the consequences of their secret lives. Spider-Man faces his biggest threat. When Spider-Man faces the Scorpion, which I believe it's that episode 7, It is a brutal battle, and Peter is almost killed. Like this, I mean, it got intense. And as I'm watching, I thought, yo, this. So I enjoyed every episode. I really did. I really did. But like, this is the point where I really started to say, yo, Marvel actually has a good cartoon on their hand. Like this is actually like a noteworthy cartoon, a cartoon worthy of watching. Man, I wish Marvel wouldn't have made so much missteps. It really upsets me. Norman gives episode 8. Norman gives Spider-Man an ultimatum, causing Peter to do some soul searching, and this is where Peter failed fighting the Scorpion. Norman gives him some advice that's opposite of what he originally heard from Uncle Ben. He said, "With great power comes great respect." That's what Norman said. And he's trying to get Spider-Man to understand, you're holding back. You shouldn't hold back. You need to go in on these people that you're fighting, which I like the fact that Peter's more controlled. Speaking of which, in Ultimate Spider-Man, was that number 13, where you see Peter beating the brakes off of a Velociraptor. Yo, you people don't understand just how strong Spider-Man actually is, and he does hold back. He does hold back a lot. Okay, episode 9, Spider-Man swings into action as Lonnie looks to settle the score, and Norman visits an old friend. Yo, things really go sideways in so many ways. Norman goes back to visit Dr. Otto Octavius, who he coincidentally had in prison, found his lab. Octavius was the one giving all of these different people throughout the city their tech. There was a couple that he gave some tech that was trying to do some heist. Peter was able to stop. There was an arsonist he gave some tech, that Peter managed to stop. And Scorpion, who's, the leader of the Scorpion gang, he gave him some tech that pretty much turned into that mechanical scorpion. I like the way they did all that. I like the way it looked, and he gave Spider-Man a run for his money. Anyway, Norman Osborn tipped the police off to where Otto Octavius was. They found him. Tony Stark actually came. Iron Man actually came, wrapped him up. So, Osborn used to work for, or Octavius used to work for Osborn. So Osborn now goes pretty much to visit him in jail to really rub it in, like, yo, I'm the reason that you locked up. I got you put in here just so you know. I was like, man, this is petty. He is king of petty. I like the way they did it. Episode 10, last episode, Peter's internship takes a dark turn with the arrival of an unexpected visitor. And at the end of the episode, so they closed the portal. They managed to get the symbiote back through the portal. When they closed the portal, it snipped off a bit of the symbiote, and Osborn finds that later on, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna get into Venom. Yo, I was like, I like this, man. I like this. When I went in, I'm not gonna say I went in wanting to dislike it, but I went into the cartoon thinking I would dislike it, and I don't. I don't. There's probably tons of people who do, who, for their reasons. They have their reasons, but hopefully I've given you my reasons why I believe this is actually a good series. Definitely worth watching. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Oh yeah, Harry Osborn, who finds out at some point, I think, was that episode 3? I think it was it might have been episode 3 or 2. Finds out Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So his dad, brings him in to help, because they're like Spider-Man's, man in a room, right? In his ear, helping him out through his battles. So Harry decides to start his own company after his dad's corruption was somewhat exposed at the end of episode 10. He sends all of the interns an invite to work for his company. And yeah, even Lonnie, who actually was able to get some powers because they tried the 110th gang, street gang tried to acquire the items that they were taking out of Oscorp's lab as the police were escorting it off. They tried to conduct a heist. He went in a truck, canister dropped. There was some, mist come out the canister. He's coughing. He leaves the truck, and turns out he's got super strength now. So we'll see where that goes. That's another angle that's interesting. I I really think this show did a good job. I I understand why they chose the art style they did, and I actually think it works. To me, each episode kind of takes you back in time, but in a good way. You know how some shows attempt to do the whole idea of like memory lane, but it does it in such a way that you're just like, no, this really doesn't, you haven't delivered this. You have not convinced me that this memory lane thing works for me. But this show did it in a very good way. And many of the episodes were actually callbacks to other things. I didn't read this. I was going to read this to kind of give you an example of what I'm talking about from the same website I was on. So here's what it says. It says trivia. The title is a reference. This is to the first episode, which the first episode is titled Amazing Fantasy. And it says the title is a reference to Spider-Man's first appearance in Amazing Fantasy number 15. Small things like that. Small things like that are very big things to people who are actual comic book fans who remember some of these things. Obviously, I wasn't alive for that, but I'm familiar with, Spider-Man's first appearance. And I was like, oh man, this is actually, this is fire. Like I like that. Again, to me, this shows that the people making this show actually knew something about comic books. Even if they didn't, they at least had enough common sense to do some research into what they were creating, which to me is a good sign. If Disney, Marvel can manage to learn how to do this, right? Like there were things, like I said, missteps they had, but they didn't lead with those missteps. It wasn't like, hey, here's this character we have in here. This is all the show is about. The show is about Spider-Man and the things going on in his life. And man, they did a good job.